Welcome to Today at Wayne, a podcast that engages and informs the Wayne State University campus community. With news, announcements, information, and current events discussions relevant to the university's goals and mission, Today at Wayne serves as the perfect forum for our campus to begin a conversation or keep one going. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Today at Wayne podcast. In the world of sports and fitness, there are certain tenets that are held so tightly that they become something akin to gospel. No pain, no gain, we tell ourselves. Winners never quit, quitters never win, we say. And of course, there's that most basic of fitness directives: drink plenty of water and stay hydrated. But what if we've got some of these ideas wrong, or at least hold some misperceptions about them? In the case of the last example, the need to constantly have water during or after physical exertion, Tamara Hew-Butler, Ph.D., an associate professor of exercise and sports science at Wayne State, has become something of an outlier. While certainly an advocate for proper hydration, Hew-Butler has gained national notice in recent years for her willingness to challenge the idea that water is only helpful, never harmful to athletes. In fact, earlier this year, Hew-Butler drew attention and some ire for a piece she penned for the Washington Post in which she challenged the conventional wisdom that all people need to drink 8 glasses of water a day to ensure good health and proper hydration. Not to burst anyone's water bottle, she wrote, but healthy people can actually die from drinking too much water. But her heterodox views on hydration are only part of what make Hew-Butler so fascinating. In addition, she has led the relaunch of the 10,000 Warriors Research Screening Project, which seeks to get a snapshot of the physical, metabolic, and mental health of WSU students, ranging from those who've never exercised to some of the university's most elite athletes. Hew-Butler also works with Jordan Saborin, a WSU doctoral student who serves as the head strength and conditioning coach for the Detroit Pistons. Together, they test body composition and sweat sodium on the Pistons players to help monitor physical changes related to their training and nutrition. Now, Hew-Butler is here with us on the Today at Wayne podcast to update us on her work and tell us how she's faring in her role as a bit of a fitness maverick. Welcome, Dr. Hew-Butler.
Glad to be here, Daryl.
Always good to have you. Great to have you. So let's jump into this. I was reading a little bit of a background on you, some profiles, and one piece I came across says you've been described as a weird outsider in the world of physiology. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, what that means. Is this because of the conclusions you've drawn, your approach to research, or for some other reasons? What makes you a weird outsider in the world of physiology?
So when most people think about science and physiology, you think about the elegance of working in the lab with like these rodent or cell culture models, and everything's really, really controlled. And you get these like beautiful like studies that there's no outside interference. And that's really what people think about science, like nerds in the lab with the white coats on and their pipettes. And I love that. That's like the mechanistic work that actually drives the foundation of our understanding. On the flip side of that is like what we see in the clinic. It's the people who get sick and the people in the hospitals. And because humans are messy, and that's what makes us human and makes us special, we're not cells in a dish without any outside interference. Mm-hmm. So my work spans a lot of testing humans in trying to bridge the elegance of basic science. Okay. With the disease associated with what we see in hospitals and in the clinic. So in one sense, our studies are not clean and beautiful enough. And on the other side, we're not like diseased enough. And so we're at this really weird interface where we study kind of healthy people and see, looking at the fringes, how healthy people actually get sick and how to make them better. But again, too, with sports medicine is how like uber healthy people actually overtrain and get injured. So again, to me, there's parallels in both of those fringes that I think inform both athletes, but inform like health and disease along the continuum that we try to bridge. So it's kind of like an unwelcome spot because we serve the uncomfortable and not a lot of people like being in that realm.
Well, one area where you, well, a little water will clean it up sometimes. And
yeah, that's right.
Speaking of water, right? One area where you have certainly made a bit of a mark, earned a little bit of attention, is in the area of hydration and overhydration. And it seems when I look at your work, when I look at the pieces that you've written, it seems to be that you think that, you know, there's some mythology that's going on around hydration, to the point where, you know, you say we don't need 8 glasses of water a day, which is something that many of us were told by our parents and by our pediatricians, by our physicians. First of all, tell us how you came to that conclusion. And then I'd be really interested in hearing how some of the reaction throughout the world of fitness has been to that idea.
So, you know, I got into hydration almost by accident. So I'm a marathon runner. And so I was working in one of the marathon medical tents, and it was really hot that day. And so people were told that they needed to drink a lot because they needed to avoid dehydration. And dehydration was going to like, oh, they're going to cramp up and they're going to like have heat stroke. And so in the medical tent that very hot day, runners were being just like brought in left and right. And again, to make matters worse, we didn't know it at the time, as we were actually, you know, giving people IVs because we actually thought that they needed more water, and water was going to be what cured them. And what happened in that day is 4 of the runners actually had seizures, and they were taken to the hospital, and they were in intensive care and comas for a week. And so because they were marathon runners and marathon running was my family, you know, it was really what caused this. And so subsequently a bunch of runners died from what we thought was a condition where you drink too much water. So at the time we didn't know, like, so people don't know that if you drink too much water, that it's actually fatal. It causes your brain to swell, and then it actually causes your lungs to fill up with fluid. And so from that incident, I went into science, and it drove my, you know, my fascination of like how much water can actually kill you and how much water is safe. So when I went back into like, why are people drinking that much water? You know, it was like, where did this 8 glasses of water come from? And we actually don't know where that came from. And so scientifically, we think that somebody made it up. So there's even been some really nice reviews where there are recommendations that say, well, most humans probably need about 2 liters, which is 8 glasses of water a day, to survive. But when they made that recommendation back in 1945, that included all of the moisture in foods and all other beverages, the soups and the, you know, the juices and the coffee and the beer, you know, it included all fluids that we ingested. But somewhere along the way, water, particularly water bottle industries, got whiff of this, and they kind of morphed that recommendation is everybody needed 8 glasses of water, not everything else, water per day. And so that myth has been propagated for like decades. And so, you know, everyone's like, even at sports fields, like, you know, drink a lot of water, you know, you got to drink water. And that's like the whole thing. But if you go back to the physiology of like how, you know, what our bodies actually, what our bodies defend, it's not just water. It's actually a balance between water and salt that's important. So there's a lot of misinformation that's driven by advertising. So, you know, it's not even just like water and the alkaline water and the oxygenated water and like the vitamin water and like the sports drink, you know, everyone's trying to sell you something, or even like the camelbacks and the water balls that ring. So everybody, you know, makes us fearful of dehydration to sell products. Do we all humans, you, me, Jordan, who's 7 foot tall, need 8 glasses of water per day? Is that this magic recommendation that's going to like suit everybody? Here I am sitting in front, you know, sitting in front talking to you in an air conditioned office. Is that going to work for the football player who's going to be out there, you know, 300 pounds working? There isn't one size that fits all, but this myth has been propagating for long periods of time. And it's really hard to actually push against it because everybody, you know, the advertising is hot and it's cool and there's no regulation to that. When I try to talk about like kidneys and like nephrons and like aquaporin shuttling, no one wants to hear about that. And so that's where we are. But in my world, I'm very attentive to like people who die. People still drinking too much water, their brain swells up and it's dying. It's completely preventable.
Have you
But again,
gotten
that's
have you gotten any pushback from people who disagree with you, other folks in the
oh,
field, other scientists?
yeah, I'm like the pariah.
You're the pariah.
Well, um because dehydration is hot, and even
Mhm,
the scientists and even our organizations like American College of Sports Medicine, they're like funded by water,
mhm.
by sports shrink industries. And so, even so, if you're funded by that, that's not going to be like, oh, we drink when you're thirsty. They're going to actually push the water. So I have for most of my career, it's actually been very venomous about like, no, she's wrong. You need to like drink a lot of water. But again, on my side is like, I see people die and I see people in the hospital because they've done that. So, I think over time, people are starting to realize the influence of advertising, or the influence of like trying to and becoming more like, gee, do we need that? And also, I think we have to be mindful of climate change. So people are like, well, most people aren't going to die, but why would you need to do extra? I mean, that's my thing. It's like, when water is going to become very, very scarce, why do we need to waste it? And so I think that, with the younger generation, that is actually helped change the tide of information going forward. So, some of those articles in the Washington Post and the New York Times have gotten a lot of debate and commentary. But I think that's what we need right now. So
Are there any sort of clear-cut examples of sort of changes that have been enacted or being put in place as a result of your findings?
I think so. So the recommendations, that we used to have to drink late glasses, drink before you get thirsty, those recommendations are being toned down by some of the flagship organizations, and they're recognizing that you can overdrink. So I think that tide is turning, but it is very hard to undo something that your parents have taught you for, and people tell you for long periods of time. So I still get it with the, coaches. I still get it with my own parents. Here's, bring your water bottle. I'm like, I'm okay.
So do your parents, do they disagree with your research, or?
They always have a water bottle. I don't think they really understand my research, to be honest with you. They're like, my mother, I don't know, it's just hyponatremia. And so they kind of don't, they don't really understand what I study, but now they sort of like, well, you can die. They realize that. But I think, too, the more that we can educate, the more that I educate my students and I educate the younger coaches and get the data out there, people are like, yeah, they're like, that makes sense. So we all don't need exactly the same. And maybe we don't need that much.
Now, you talk about educating the younger coaches. Have any of your ideas taken hold at Wayne State in terms of the athletic department? Are we seeing some changes there?
Well, what I'm really happy about. So I've been working with the football team, because football players have died from drinking too much water because of, cramps. You got to, drink the water. I'm out there, but I'm really pleasantly surprised. Is like they let them drink when they're thirsty, and they have a wide variety of water and sports drinks available. And, we give them watermelon with salt. And so they've, to me, they've really embraced what is the right message.
Okay.
Some locker rooms, they have the urine P chart out there and they give them IVs before every game. But I'm really happy at Wayne State that I think they're very pragmatic in their approach to hydration. And so I've been very happy about that.
All right.
And so even with the Pistons, we test them with, sweat sodium. So again, to understanding it's not just about the water, but about some of the sodium that you lose through sweat.
I wanted to ask you that, moving from sort of college to the pros. Tell me a little bit more about your work with the Pistons and how did it start?
So, I was in another place, and they were at Auburn Hills. And so I was testing, I guess you can delete this. So I was testing basketball players at Oakland, and they like, oh, you have a DEXA and you do sweat. I'm like, yeah. So then they were at Auburn Hills at the time. And so they came into the, lab kind of like unofficially. But again, too, then I had the opportunity to do more research here at Wayne State, and I took it, and I also took it on the premise I knew that they were coming down here.
Mhm.
And so also too, they knew who I was and what we can offer, which is body comp and sweat sodium. And then Jordan Saborin, who I work with, he was a strength and conditioning coach. He wanted to do his PhD. And that made it even easier for us to kind of study, what's going to make these guys better.
Mhm.
And so that, but also then have this relationship where, he and I can, we can do some tests. And now the G Leagues come in and we got the Motor City Cruise here, and that's going to be another avenue. So, I started out studying runners, but basketball players are, they're so tall.
Yeah.
That their physiology is really interesting. So that's kind of how that started. And again, to having Jordan as a PhD student and a Wayne State PhD student, and working with the Pistons, that's really been nice. And I think that's where a lot of pro teams are going.
Mhm.
And, the big collegiate teams and Wayne State being a part of that, data science is going to infiltrate sports, where we're going to be led by the science. And I think it's moving in that direction.
Okay.
So sports performance is, kind of our niche. And again, too, that's kind of the area that we feel that we can really make a difference inside of coaching, inside of athletics, as well as the work that we do with the normal population.
Now, we talked a little bit about the hydration issue, but are there other sort of myths, other misperceptions that, folks who are interested in fitness, athletes, coaches, trainers, parents, are there other myths that, that are out there that are very closely held that perhaps pose the same sort of potential dangers as overhydration?
I mean, there's myths everywhere, and they all probably come with supplements. And that's the biggest thing. So even for us, we did a study on vitamin D. And again, too, that's how, anything that's going to help performance. So anyway, with most of the literature, if you do randomized controlled trials, they find that there's no difference. But again, too, when we just do screenings, there's relationships. But other myths that might hurt people, I mean, that's hard to say, because you go to social media and you hear something every day: beet juice, sleep, that it's hard to pinpoint. But is it going to kill you? I mean, 10,000 steps. Well, I mean, people argue, do we need 10,000? But again, too, if you have less or more, there's some variation to that.
Okay.
But again, too, if there's the only answer that I feel that might be relevant to that is, and peripherally related is that the definition of exercise, though, has changed.
Okay.
Whereas exercise for us meant high and vigorous activity, your heart rate gets up 20 minutes, three times a week. That will increase your fitness. And now in our sedentary societies, just standing up from your computer is exercise. Ooh, 1 minute, that's all you need to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's information that kills you, but from my perspective is, studying people who over exercise, the minimum threshold is really, really moved, where I'm not exactly sure all of that is healthy, other than the fact that we do need to move, and that has to be a priority in going forward.
And too often we're not moving enough, right?
Yeah, look at us.
Sedentary as all can be. Well, yeah. I want to, we're running a little low on time, so I want to get ready to wrap up. But I did want to ask you kind of what's next on the horizon in terms of your work. What other things can we expect to see come from your research, from the work that you're doing here and in other places?
So I think, we have two avenues. One is, peak performance. We want to know how do we measure people's progression so that they actually don't overtrain. How do we bring them back to line? So again, too, we're looking at heart rate monitors. We're looking at body composition. We're looking at mental stress to pull that all together. So that will always continue, because I think that is our biggest niche with high performance sports. But on the flip side, being here in Detroit, we have something called 10,000 Warriors, where, we want to get a snapshot of what does the community health look like? So again, too, we offer, we have a screening process where we're looking at physical health. So we do the body composition with the DEXA scan. We do the strength testing and peak power jumps. And then we look at metabolic health, blood pressure, blood glucose, and visceral belly fat. And then we do, we look at depression. And again, too, it's like people are like, no, I don't want to let me get in shape. Like after the pandemic, they say that on average, people have gained 26 pounds. So, we have to address that now. We actually have to assessment. Okay, here you are now. Where do you want to go? And make some recommendations so that try these, things, and then come back in 6 months to see actually if we can improve health of Detroit, and especially Wayne State students and faculty, by actually just doing preventative mechanisms, by actually getting people moving, getting people exercising. And I think our lab, just getting so that you have your own data to work with and then working to improve that. That's what we want to see come out of the lab work that we're doing.
Okay. And hopefully that'll lead to a healthier Detroit, right? I mean, we have a big impact on what goes on in the city. Many of us are part of the city. Maybe these are ideas that hopefully we can take out to our respective communities. And
we hope so.
Make an impact.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Hew-Butler, I want to say thank you again for taking the time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate your energy and your very unique perspective on a lot of issues. I really thank you for taking your time to join us today.
Thank you, and don't drink too much.
I will at least not water. I'll try not to. Thanks so much. You have a wonderful
Thanks again, Daryl.
All
right, you too.
Thanks for listening to Today at Wayne. We'd love to hear from you, our campus community, about other podcast ideas and topics. What compelling things are you doing to spread the good word about living, learning, working, and playing like a warrior? Let us know by visiting todayatwayne.edu.